Hey, Rob. Thank you very much, Greg. And actually, I think if those of you were inside the pavilion for the speech, I actually referred to Craig Butt by name, but I said that a local reporter called our campaign the Ring of Fire campaign, and that was Craig Robinson, because unlike a lot of campaigns, you've just sort of come in and go to the big cities. We've been to, just in the last 2 weeks, we went to 50 cities, from Strawberry Point to Rock Rapids, all the way down to Fort Madison and Burlington, and all the way down the Missouri down to Council Bluffs, and every place in between. And we've been out talking to Iowans. And what I've heard from Iowans is they want to make sure that we have a candidate who shares their vision, the heartland of America. I like to think that I've laid out in my speeches exactly why you should support Rick Santorum. Number one, because my vision for this country is one that believes in our founding principles, which I believe is at stake. What's at stake in this country is that founding principle that makes us different than every other country in the history of the world, that we are endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights. That phrase in the Constitution makes America different than every other country. Why? Because before that time, our founders came from countries where they believed that rights came to the king, not to the people, and that the people were subjects of the king. But America was different. America was a country that said, no, we are a moral enterprise that believes that rights come to each and every person, and those rights, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Rights come to us from God, and then God gave us laws on which to exercise those rights. That's why I say America is a moral enterprise. If you think about it, what rights? The right to life. Here we are in a country that doesn't value the right to life anymore. How can we be a country that is continuing to be blessed by God with rights and privileges if we don't value the most basic of rights that He gave us? Freedom, liberty. I'll take applause anytime. Feel free to interrupt. Our founders believed, imagine this, 1776, a bunch of elites. Think of elites in America today and elites in 17, it was no different. These are people who wore powdered wigs and were the upper crust of society. And they said, rights go to everyone. Freedom is for everyone. Imagine that concept, that they would trust the hard scrabble of America with the right to build a great country from the bottom up, not, as our founders came from, a country governed from the top down. I read a book recently called Washington's Crossing. If you haven't read it, it was written by David Hackett Fisher. It's a great book. Read Washington and what he did to hold his army together at a time when America was going to fail. On Christmas Eve, America was done. Washington was routed, crossed the Delaware from New Jersey, and was a routed, decrepit army that was falling apart. The British, you read the conversations of the British, and you see two different views of the world. Washington, meeting with his generals and his colonels and everybody from all of these different ragtag groups that came as volunteers. And he didn't say, this is what I'm going to do and you're going to follow my orders. That's what the British did. And they listened to nobody. But Washington crossed the Delaware because the people, from the people, said, this is what we believe we can do. This is what we know from knowing what's going on across America, that we can do this. And Washington learned from the greatness of the American people that you can govern a war and you can win a great victory. The British lost because they didn't listen to their own people. That's why they continue to lose, because they believe in the elite to control us. And Washington said, no, no, as much power as I have, I'm going to listen to those voices of a free people. And he won a great victory, and we won a war that no one thought was possible. That's the birth of America. That's in our Declaration. When Barack Obama was asked the question, do you believe in American exceptionalism? He said, I believe in American exceptionalism like the British believe in British exceptionalism and the Greeks believe in Greek exceptionalism. Mr. President, you don't understand America. You have no clue of what makes us great. We are not Greece. We are not Britain. We are a people who believe in freedom, who believe in a freedom to do what? Pursue happiness. Pursue happiness. Now, we have problems in this country today because we have those on the left and the right who see happiness as something different than our founders did. They see happiness as the pursuit of pleasure, the pursuit of pleasure, the pursuit of doing whatever you want to do. No one get in my way. I can do whatever I want. Government, stay out of my way. I can do whatever I want. That is not how our founders saw happiness. Look up the dictionaries at the time. And they defined happiness as doing what was morally good. Happiness, true happiness. True happiness is not the pursuit of the freedom to pursue whatever you want, but the freedom to pursue whatever you ought to do. Our founders said our Constitution was made for a moral and religious people. It was wholly inadequate for the governance of any others. I was at a church. Anybody here from Cornerstone Church? I was at Cornerstone Church in Sioux City. Pastor Kerry Gordon got up at the talk I was at last Sunday, and he said, the Constitution without the Declaration, where the source of rights come from, God, and what the charge of God is to follow nature and nature's law. The Constitution without the Declaration is, in a word, France at the Revolution. France without God, without a moral law, is anarchy, chaos, violence, and the demanding guillotine. We are different. We as conservatives must remember that we are not liberty and fraternity, France. Because without a father, you can have no brotherhood. What is at stake in this election, if we do not defeat Barack Obama, is simply this. Obamacare is implemented, and everything I just discussed is forfeit. Because then the government will be just in the position we were in 1775 before Washington crossed the Delaware, where Britain controlled us, where the government controlled us, and was able to tell us exactly what they do and had no obligation to listen to any of us. Because now we are dependent upon them for our very lives. Why do you think they fought for 100 years to get national health care? Why do you think they were willing to lose this election in 2010 to get national health care? Because when they get national health care, they get control of you and they are in power. And that's what they believe. They're not evil people. They just see the world differently. They see the world, well, like all of your ancestors who stayed behind and didn't come here. They've been influenced by the very people who stayed behind and have transformed England, transformed France, transformed all these countries from countries who went from nobility to socialism like this. Why? Because they like to be ruled. Your ancestors came, my father came, because he did not want to be ruled. This is the election where you stand up. You put on your cloak of citizenship. One of the statues in the United States House of Representatives, we get 2 for every state. One of the statues from Pennsylvania is from Peter Muhlenberg, who was a preacher, very famous one, he and his brother both. And you go by that statue, which is right at the entrance to the rotunda if you come from the House of Representatives. And you see a man regally dressed in clerical robes. And he's grabbing his robes and tearing them off. Because during the revolution, he quoted, "There is a time for peace and there is a time for war." And he said, "This is the time to fight," as he tore off his robes and exposed a general's commission, a Continental Army uniform. And he recruited his regiment from his church, and he went to fight. No one is asking you to tear off clerical robes and have a soldier's uniform, but to simply put on the cloak of citizenship. You're here because you care. You're here because you want to make a difference. Ladies and gentlemen, we have an opportunity to defeat this president and turn this country back around. But we need a leader that can do it. I'm here today because I pledged to my children, to the grandfather who brought my father to this country, who worked in the coal mines for 30 years digging coal in a deep mine, that under my watch we would not lose that freedom. My father passed away 6 months ago, and I told him that. I said, I would fight for what you gave me. It's our turn to fight, and I ask for your help. The national media has not paid a whole lot of attention to our campaign, but today, you can change that. As I said in the building, they may not have paid attention to me because I'm the only candidate in this race who's defeated not just one, not just two, but 3 Democratic incumbents. Not in districts like some of the folks in this race that are heavily Republican, but in a 60 and 70% Democratic district. I got redistricted between the two. And then in a state that had almost 1 million more registered Democrats, and I went up against the best the Democrats had to offer in 1994. 2 guys had just elected a president named Carville and Begala came to Pennsylvania to defeat me, and I beat them. And I went to Washington, D.C. and did what I said I was going to do. I did what I said I was going to do. I voted conservatively, but I did more than that. There's a lot of folks that can vote the right way. But it's a matter of leadership. It's a matter of going to a place that's almost impossible to get things done and make accomplishments. There's a lot of folks can stand up and say, I'll vote no, and I voted no, and I voted against this, and I voted against that. And I'll never compromise. Those are not leaders, and that is not leadership, that is showmanship. We need people who are actually going to lead, who are going to motivate the American public, and who understand how to get things done, to be respectful in doing so, but be vigilant on making sure that you stand by your principles. I use the example of welfare reform. Ladies and gentlemen, we're looking at Medicaid, food stamps, housing benefits, education benefits, all of these federal programs that Paul Ryan and I have suggested we need to block grant and send to the states. The Democrats have said, no way, no way. These are federal entitlements. Only one person on that stage on Thursday night ever ended a federal entitlement, and it was me. And guess what? It was the mother of all federal entitlements. Aid to families with dependent children, welfare. It was the ultimate hook, the ultimate dependency. It was the high mark of the Great Society program. And I went out and we argued the case to the American public that dependency is not a good thing. That generation after generation on dependency on federal programs is not a good thing, and we rallied the American public. And we were able to get a bill passed with bipartisan support in the Senate against Daniel Patrick Moynihan, who I went toe-to-toe with on the floor of the Senate. Ted Kennedy, I went toe-to-toe with, and I won. President Clinton vetoed it once, twice, but we kept coming back. And yes, we compromised. Not on the core issues. Not on any of the federal entitlement, no compromise. Not on putting time limits on welfare, no compromise. Not on requiring work, no compromise. Oh, we compromised a little bit on daycare funding. We compromised a little bit on transportation assistance. But you have to understand, we transformed this system. Some would have said, you can't compromise on these things. You have it my way or the highway. And the welfare rolls would not have been cut in half. We would not have seen the lowest rates of poverty in the history of this country. We have not have seen never married women go from 40% employed to 62% employed. Leadership, not showmanship. Focus on what you want to accomplish and get it done. I know a lot of you have voted. Those of you who didn't vote for me, I hope you feel bad. Those of you who have yet to vote, you can make up for them. And please go over there and help us out. Thank you all very much. God bless.